All, my name is Niranjan. So here I would like to share you the details of construction methods, construction practices, which I have been experienced since from 8 to 10 years in my construction journey. So I would like steps involved in a journey. In my journey, the basic first step is to identification of the site. Next, surveying, planning, structural designing, estimation, and finally the construction. So before there are a lot of back-end things we have to do. Just like firstly, basic the site visit. So we need to visit the site where it is, in what condition it is, whether it is having a weeds or any of the debris and all. So first, after visiting the sites, if there is any debris, very cleanly, so that for the marking and all, the site should be very clear. The boundaries is clearly visible for an engineer or for a client. And if the site is very minimum, that is around 4 to 5,000 square feet, the total station or any of the instrument is not that much necessary. So by using the tape measurements, line door, or the laser measurements, we can mark the sites. But if the number of columns is more, number of footings is more, and the site is more than 5,000 square feet, 50,000 square feet, which it is visible in the screen. The area of the site is more than 50,000 square feet. So in that particular condition, we are using a total station survey. So by using the total station survey, we will get the exact measurements, exact boundaries, the shape of a site. The planning works. If at all we'll get the boundaries, clear boundaries, the measurements and the shape of a site, the next thing for an engineer or for an architect is to do planning. Basically, architecture, in generally, an architecture will plan the things. Again, it depends. If it is a bigger buildings, the architecture will need to design the plans, or the civil engineer can do the things. So for designing the plans and all, requirements are there. So how many bedrooms they require, how many bathrooms, how many, windows, puja room, kitchen, dining, what are the dimensions they require for bedrooms and all. So the basic discussion with our clients, we firstly will do is to collect all the data from the client. They need to involve in it. In general, in smaller buildings or in especially in the South Indias, the people, especially the Indians, we are fully addicted with the Vastu. So according to the Vastu, we need to plan the things very particularly. The people are again people are following this of Vastu for planning of a building. And next, what are the client requirement is number of floors and what are all the material requirements they want in the site. After taking the requirements from the client, we need to get a authority like municipality or corporation and all. After getting the permission, the construction license permission, only we can construct the building in the site. I think all over India, we need a permission from the concerned authority to construct a project or a building. So after getting the permission, only we can start the construction works in the site. His duty is to start the structural designing. So the structural engineer or a civil engineer will start working on the structural designing of a structure. For the basic structural designing of a structure, he needs an SBC report, soil bearing capacity, what kind of soil and what are the number of floors. Material type. Material type is very, very important for a structural designing, where the materials used for the walls, like if we are using with the red bricks, or we are using the lightweight bricks or CC blocks, the dead load will be very, very different from each other. So the material type is also very important. Concrete of lightweight concrete, or we are using the plastering with either cement plaster or gypsum plaster. We consider all the factors, all the materials, loads, and do the load calculations. So depending on the load calculation, we'll start the designing the beams, slabs, and columns, the entire things. And one more important thing is that grade of the concrete and the steel. So grade of concrete with M20 or M25 in general buildings, almost 80% of Indian buildings are designed with M20 or M25 in general. And the grade of steel depends. In some cities, the availability of HYSD bars is 500. In some of the cities, the availability of bars is 550. In some of the cities, or 650, 600 and all. So based on we will start the designing process. So how we will design? How engineer? In general, we will have a manual method to design, or else we will have a design software. We are having very, very different softwares like Tesla, ETAPS, Stat Pro, Safe, Revit, and all. I do generally with an ETAPS. I am using this 150 buildings in the ETAPS software. So in the ETAPS, we can obtain the results of column, beam, and slab designs. But for an footing design, I'm using the Safe software for the designs. And there are many methods for the SBC, like standard penetration test, drop weight test, direct shear test, plate bearing penetration test, pressure meter test, field weight shear test. So here at one of the site at Ballari, we are using a drop weight test. In this video, you can observe the huge weight is dropped from top to bottom, so that the SBC, the soil, what we have been drawn from the site, will be taken to the lab are made. And after obtaining the SBC report, only we will start the designing of columns and the footings. Next main thing is the estimation of the materials. What is the materials, the labor, and machinery? Again, the estimation depends on the what kind of materials we are using, the kind of aggregates, the cement, very varieties of cements in the India, like PPC, OPC, and all. So different grades will have a different prices. Next, sand. In generally, in some of this, we are going only with M sand, P sand, and all. And in some of the cities, we are using only a natural sand, which is very difficult to obtain in the recent days. Next, the steel. What grade of steel? The grade of the steel depends on the price and the brands also. And next, what type of materials we are using? That is bricks, the frames, each and everything. The estimation is done by an engineer. So our duty, our civil engineer's duty, is to make a clear estimation of all the materials used in the site. And next, the main thing which I would like to share you my experience regarding is the construction. As many of the civil engineers here know very much about things, but when it comes to a practical one, the people are not that much related with the practical things. So the basic thing The things involved in the construction is the excavation, footing, column, the filling in the basement, the grade beam, plinth beam, brickwork, the sill level, lintel level, roof, and all the finishing works. Now, I would like to represent each and everything in detail about the construction methods. First, the basic thing is the excavation. So, for the excavation part, we need to do marking where we need to excavate. General JCBs, procliners, excavators, Hitachi excavators, Volvo excavators, and all. Here in the pic, you can observe we are excavating a site by using the JCBs and the Volvo machines. Started an excavation at one of the particular site. We found a hard strata. So what to do with that hard strata? So at that point, at that level, we need to excavate the soil at anyhow. We made it. We break the rock by using the compressors and all. We excavated the soil our required level. And after all the excavation, so our exact shape and exact measurements of a footing has to be required. So that we need to do dressing by the manual. After the dressing, we will start the PCC for the footing. So PCC is done at the grade of M15, M5 or M10 grade. PCC, we are using here an hand mixer for the mixing of the concrete. For the mixing of concrete, we can do it with an Ajax mixture, a diesel mixture, hand mixture, or with an R of the PCC at the footing. Next duty of an engineer is to where the exact columns and footing is to be placed on the footing on the PCC. So when it comes to know again, we need to do marking with an total station. Using total station, the exact marking of an columns and footing is done. After the marking of the footing and columns, we'll start erection of the columns and footings, where we can observe in the pic 2. After erection of all the columns and footings, the next thing is to do shuttering works. The shuttering work is done. Screen clearly. The shuttering is done by using the plywoods, or we can do it with an MS sheets also. So by the clear measurements, the clear supports and clear shuttering is done. And now it is ready for the concreting. So in the next step in the site is to do concreting after the shuttering of the concreting is laying for the footing. And next in the second pic, you can observe that again the concreting is pouring above the footing, that is a pedestal one. Here in this project, I have been designed the footing for a pedestal one. So the pedestal footing is laid just next day after the footing is laid. After all this, the backfilling is to be done. To explain you clearly. For laying of the plinth, okay, I need to place again a PCC where the plinth has to be placed. In general, where we will place some plinth? The plinth beam can be placed between the columns or below the walls, or first pic we can observe that the PCC has been laid where the beams are casted. After the PCC is laid, the shuttering has to be done. The second pic we can observe the shuttering of a beam, shuttering and bar bending of a beam is done. And after all that, concreting is laid. Here, the engineer has to inspect clearly the main or the tensile bars. In many of the site conditions, the bar benders makes a mistake is the extra bars or a tensile bars. What we are speaking is that the people will place very wrong way. So our duty, the civil engineer's duty or the site engineer's duty is to place the have steel in. After checking all this, the one more important thing is that covering. So in generally, we will provide a covering of 20 mm at the top, bottom, and sides for the beams. And next, for the footings and all, we will use 40 mm covering. And next, for up to 15 to 20 mm. And after the inspection of an engineer, we need to do concreting works. In the third peak, we can observe the concreting laid at the site. Here the plinth beam has to be laid. If the plinth beam has to be laid below the ground level or at the ground level, we can lay it directly. But my client requirement is that plinth beam must be above the ground level up to a 5 feet height. So in that conditions, we can construct a brick wall or an side stone masonry. Here at one of our site, you can see in the pic, we have built in side stone masonry up to a height of 4 feet, and above that we have laid a plinth beam. In the second pic, we can observe that after the bar bending and shuttering of a plinth beam, concreting is done. We can observe it in a third pic. So in these conditions, we will be using the plinth beams. So based on our client requirements, the plinth beam has to be laid where the exact measurements, the alignment, and each and everything has to be checked from the engineer. So for that purpose, the starter marking for the column has to be done. Shows that the column shuttering is done and people are laying the concrete. So likewise, the column is casted up to the roof level. So in the third pic, you can observe that the column is completely casted. And at the time of laying of the column, need to check the plumb clearly so that the column should be vertical enough. For building is the construction of the brickwork. Here in this project, I am using a red bricks or clay bricks for the construction. So we can use a lightweight bricks, porotherm bricks, and CC blocks and all for the construction based on the client requirement and all. Pic 2 shows that the construction of the brickwork up to the sill level. So that shows that the sill level is reached. And in the third pic, why it is placed? We are placed at the site because to avoid the cracks. Nowadays, the cracks are quite common in the construction sites. So it may be a lot of the reasons for the level or for at the construction of a bricks. The to avoid the cracks. In the third pic in the screen, we can clearly observe the coping concrete is done by the laborers. So after construction of the brick up to the sill level, the windows positions and the marking is done from an pic. We can observe the lintel level. In some of the buildings, the customer requirement is to have an chedjas at the lintel levels so that they can place some, they can store the particles, materials and all. So lintel levels. Next, so at the lintel levels, the bar bending and shuttering is to be done. Is to again the raising of columns up to the roof level and the roof shuttering and bar bending is to be done. So in generally, the temporary supports provided for the construction and the laying of a concrete at the sites is called an shuttering. Wooden sheets or an MS sheets for the shuttering works, and for the supports we use an MS poles or an wooden poles or bullies we call it in generally. So by using all these materials, the roof shuttering is done as shown in the pics 1 and 2. It is clearly showing the shuttering works. Before laying of the concrete, the beam reinforcement and concealed beams and also the electrical piping in the slab. So why do we make an electrical pipings? So to make it invisible, the electrical things at the time of concreting itself. I mean, before the concreting. And after completion of all the things, the column shuttering, beam, slab, and the electrical pipings, finally the concrete is laid. So the concrete here, an RMC machine is supplied. So our engineer's duty is to have a perfect compaction at the especially at the beams and columns joints itself. And finally, after the laying, the curing is to be checked. So for the curing purpose, we need to light cement mortar frames in this pics showing the door frame is fixing. The door frame may be of UPVC or with an wooden things like teak wood, honey wood, and all. Here in our site, we are frames. And after placing the frames, next thing is the electrician duty. Again, the concealed things has to be done at walls. At the time of concreting, the labor has done the concealed thing at concrete levels. Now at the brick levels, done for the wiring and the switches purpose. After all the completion of the electrical boards, pipings and all, we'll start the plastering. In generally, we do the thickness of plastering as 12 to 20 thickness, depending on the site conditions, the undulations and all. Or nowadays, we are having a gypsum. It's very good as it consists of a fibers, and even in the cement plastering also, we can mix the fibers to avoid the cracks. And here you can observe that at the column and beam joints, we are placing a mesh, a chicken mesh, we call it generally. We are using this mesh for the joints. So at the joints. So the pics showing the ceiling plastering. So before doing this ceiling plastering or to any of the RCC structures, we need to prepare the surface, especially for the ceiling. We need to prepare the surface by hacking the things. So we need to do hacking with 6 inches gaps. We need to do hacking. After then, we need to do ceiling plastering or the plastering to the columns or beams. Otherwise, the plastering may peel off. Construct a staircase headroom, lift headroom, and overhead tanks and all. Here in this pic showing the staircase and lift headroom construction. This pic showing the overhead tank construction. The bar bending and shuttering is going on. Tile working. One of the very aesthetic things in the building is the tile works. Will the in all the flooring things. A very aesthetic, very beautiful looking things in the interior works is the tiling. And one more thing we need to keep it in mind for the bathroom tiling is that we need to do waterproofing. Yes, we need to do waterproofing so that it shouldn't leak or damp or shouldn't get any of the problems. Waterproofing for the bathrooms, corridors, balconies, or any of the water penetrating things. Laying of the flooring tiles. At the end, the finishing works are more and more. I mean, might be a POP works, a painting work, electrical work, sanitary work, exterior designing, interior designing. There are many things. Wooden claddings, cot work, TV, kitchen cabinets, exterior finishes, balcony design, yes, landscapings and all. So at the especially at the exterior plastering or the painting, the safety factor is very important at the sites. Every civil engineer's duty is to take an extra safety, especially at the exterior surface like painting or the window fixing. Finishing the sanitary fittings like commodes, wash basin, bathtubs, the bathroom appears in this manner. Next, the wiring things. So at the wiring, our civil engineer will give the detailed drawing for the wiring and plumbing things. According to that, the labor has to do plumbing things. Next, switches is to be placed for the switchboards. The interior painting work is going on at the site. So this is a POP or the false ceiling works. So whenever we visit any of the showrooms, it appears very enthusiastic or very beautiful. The work done from the labor is shown in the pic one, that for the preparation, a channels is to be laid. After the laying of the channels, wiring has to be done. After the wiring, the POP sheets is to be covered. Next, wardrobes construction at bedroom. It is one of the biggest project at Hospet and Ballari regions. 119 flats. This is the entry arch